Welcome to the Landy Peak podcast. I'm your host and friend, Landy Peak, and I am thrilled to have you join me. In each episode, we will explore what makes life truly fulfilling: happiness, deep connections, and self-discovery. Together, we'll uncover that happiness is not a destination, but a way of living. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Here's the truth. Most strong women don't crumble in the big moments. We handle those. We unravel in the subtle ones, the messy moments, the overstimulating rooms, the days when your body is screaming to slow down while your life keeps saying it's time to speed up. And that's exactly what we're talking about today. Welcome back to the Landy Peak podcast. I'm Landy Peak. And today, Michele Vineyard joins me to unpack conscious living in a way that actually applies to real life. Not perfection, not spiritual bypassing, not unrealistic routines or selling everything and moving to a farm and living off grid. We're talking about subtle shifts that create real stability. How to stop overriding your body's cues, why presence feels impossible when you're stretched thin, and the messy moments where these tools matter most. If you've been moving too fast, holding too much, or losing yourself in the pace of your own life, this episode is going to clarify so much. So let's get to it. I am so thrilled. For today's guest, we have Michele Vineyard here with us. Michele, would you share a little bit about yourself so the listeners can get to know you?
Sure. Happy to be here. Thanks, Landy. My name is Michele, and I'm a conscious living coach. And in a nutshell, what that means is I work with individuals that want to go from sort of that frantic pace to a more profound presence in their day to day. And what does that look like in different seasons of life? Because it tends to be constantly shifting.
Yes, it does. I am so excited for this. Okay, so talk to me more about conscious living so the listener gets the idea of what we're talking about.
Yeah, so conscious living is a big topic, and it means many different things to many different people depending on their experience, where they've been in life, where they're at now. So, what I like to do is when I'm having an initial conversation with someone or they're kind of just getting introduced to that concept, I talk a lot about profound practices, and that's kind of what I base everything around. So anybody who comes into my world kind of starts on my email list for a couple weeks, and I send out some profound practices every day because I think they are great anchors for anyone, no matter what season of life that they're in.
So, when you're talking about a profound anchor, what does that look like?
The profound anchor, the profound practice. So that is a very individualized experience. So say if you are, well, take my son, for example. He's 24 years old. He's currently finishing up some schooling, so his looks very different than maybe a new mom or a newlywed or somebody who's retired. So we have those conversations. Now, there are some that, across the board, breath work is a great place to start because you can do it anywhere. You can do it anytime. No one knows what you're doing. The breath work is kind of the basic one I start with, and nothing big. 4 counts in, 8 out. Allows that nervous system to regulate. It lets you know that you're safe. And it can be used anywhere, like I said. So that's a really basic one. And it might sound like, wow, that's a no-brainer when we think about it. But consciously working with your breath is huge. It's an ancient practice, but it's actually pretty radical for today's way of living.
It really is. And we don't even notice that we're breathing. And when we do, it's feeling that shallow, like, oh my gosh, I can't breath. Hold on. I can't breathe. I can't catch my breath as I'm trying to combine two ideas. But it is a powerful way that we get to shift, that we can feel those immediate results in our body of like, okay, I'm focusing. And I love because I use the 4 in, 8 out as well. So very familiar as my body hears that, like, okay. And I can instantly start to shift just by thinking about that. Talk to us more about as you're like, we start with a practice, such as your breath, and then we're looking at conscious living. What is that going to entail? Because it feels big, all encompassing, and overwhelming. And okay, does this mean that I'm giving up everything that I'm doing in my life right now and having to redo everything? And I'm, going on the farm and doing chickens and cows and horses and, self sufficient? Or what does that look like?
Yeah. Okay, I love that. Absolutely not. So when we're working with the breath, say if we start there and we're just integrating that in, you're still going about, you might not have anything external that changes immediately, right? So it's just like a little crack in the doorway, say. And then the more that you remember or come back to it, the bigger that crack starts to widen. And then say you might start to see some things you can shift or change, but I'm all about these subtle changes. And a lot of those changes are just pure insight, things that you see differently. Nothing changes externally, but man, you see it differently internally. So it could be something internal, it could be something external. But what I love is subtle change because the nervous system, my nervous system is one that works with subtle change much better than, huge, huge change all at once. So, and no, it doesn't mean we're, floating with our mudras. It can look like that, but you can do this anywhere. So right now I'm in a period of life where I'm traveling all the time. I'm in Southern California a lot of the year. I happen to be in upstate New York right now, which is a whole different scene. These profound practices work everywhere.
So it's really allowing yourself space and centeredness to be kind of present in where you are, who you are in the moment.
Yeah, I call it space and grace. That's kind of my little theme I use when I'm in a messy moment and or I'm in a messy moment with other people. We're just going to give ourselves some space and some grace. And man, does that have a tendency to shift things.
Just saying that is huge. When you think, and I love the term messy moment because
Yeah.
there's no like shame, blame going on in that moment when it's a messy moment. And so when we're in that messy moment, allowing ourselves some space and if not more importantly, grace, because then we get into those shame spirals of like, this got big. I love the term messy because it's just like, okay, it's not a huge thing. It's just a mess. And we're no longer going in the I shoulds, I woulds, I coulds, I needed it. It's let me give myself some space to breathe and some grace in whatever went on.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about like what that looks like in daily life and how we can start kind of bringing that in to these chaotic, messy moments of our life.
Yeah. That's good. So going into different seasons of life, it can definitely look like different things. So and you're not going to get to like the perfect place. Okay, let's just throw that out the window. Um because this is an iterative process and it's going to change just like we change in our day to day. So when I had what I call my spiritual awakening and I started to integrate more of these things into my life, I thought, okay, I'm doing all the things, check, 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 check. Well, man, I've got this going and nothing bad is going to happen. I'm just going to keep on going. This is great, feeling great. Well, I went into periods of life where what looks like externally very tragic circumstances, things happening. And those profound practices, of all the modalities I studied, everything that I had been doing came in like muscle memory. And it really carried me through times where if I did not have them, even there were very messy times, and if I did not have these profound practices, I don't think I would have come out the other side with as much space, grace, and wisdom as I did. So it wasn't about being perfect. It was about having other things in my toolkit to help carry me through that I had. Everybody has these, but just having the awareness, the conscious living that I had these, made it a whole different experience, which I'm very grateful for.
That's incredible. And the reframe of it doesn't have to be perfect, but we get to use those tools in moments that feel messy, chaotic, big to help bring in more of that presence and that grounding. I love how you talked about um in that space that it came in like muscle memory. Because we really, I think a lot of us link muscle memory to those physical things that we do, like riding a bike. You know how to do it. But when we're using these practices in our daily life, things that, like the breath work that we do almost unconsciously or automatically kick into those patterns of support because we have worked with our systems around that support. And so we know that it's familiar, it's easy, it doesn't feel like an extra thought process of like, oh my gosh, I'm already stressed. Now I have to focus on this. It's just there.
Yeah. And the iterative process of practicing when you're in moments of calm and when you're not is really where the magic happens, because then it does become more like a reflex. And the beauty of this is, if you are someone who has children, you can model this for your children. You can bring your children into your breathwork practice. You can let them explore with you. That's something I'm interested in, is seeing more of this going out into the world to, be centered with families and with children, definitely.
That is so neat because, yes, what we do with ourselves is it's a cascading effect. And as we're consciously bringing it in awareness of our kiddos, they then can use those tools when they're feeling those messy moments, and it can really shift and help things.
Yes, and you might get some resistance. I have encountered this. So people that know me, and I try a profound practice in a moment, or they're not quite sure what's going on. I'm shifting, and they're used to me this way, and I'm kind of shifting. It might be uncomfortable. And what I've found is the profound practices have helped me have conversations with, say, my spouse, who we've been together 29 years. He knows me very well, and I'm also shifting and changing because of these practices. And so it's allowed me to have conversations that needed to be had, it coming from a much more grounded place, which I think has helped. And also I can see how me doing the practices and being grounded has allowed him to shift, and vice versa. I think that it's really helped those communication skills.
And it makes so much sense because when we're feeling that kind of grounded or safety inside of our body, we are less reactive to one another. We are more open to feedback and to conversations because we're already saying, oh, I'm safe and I'm okay right here. And so we're using practices that we do in spaces and times that don't feel threatening and big to kind of teach ourselves tools that we can use in times that do feel big so that we do have that muscle memory and it just kicks in. It's like, okay, I can do this. And I now have more capacity to be able to handle the bigger, messier things without feeling rattled, without feeling, shaky and anxious. And those are okay because we're still doing them. But there's an inner confidence when we can speak our minds and not speak with that shaky voice where it's like, okay, I'm okay to share. Real safety in our body is I'm okay to use my voice. And I think that is so huge as you're talking about doing it in a daily practice or in a regular practice so that we have that tool when we need it.
Exactly. Yes. And it's a practice that keeps growing. So what I'm finding for myself is I add more to my toolkit. With the
Mhm.
profound practices, during different seasons, I'll call on different practices to come in or go out. And before I thought, oh, I've got to do my yoga every single day. But no, I have a toolkit, and it seems like it's almost blending itself into this beautiful seasonal toolkit of different practices that come in and out naturally now.
Ooh, I love the visual of the toolkit because I can see you like sitting in front of it and saying, okay, so what is going to be my best tool? And we talk about that with my son who loves to build. We have to have the right tool for the right job so that we decrease frustration and we get things done that we want to get done. And so as you're looking at, there is no one tool that is going to fix, shift everything, that there are seasons and times and that things will come in and out. And there's so much permission there that we don't have to just force, I need to do meditation and I have to do meditation for 20 minutes a day so that I am whatever it is that, we put into the story. But you're really saying that we get to use these tools as we need when we need.
Yeah. And then that's a part of the conscious living is you are kind of weaving or creating your own practice with bringing all these different modalities or things that enhance your experience together. And only you can know what those things are and giving yourself permission to try different things in a place that helps your nervous system to where it feels safe, like the pace that you tried the things. The exploratory piece of it, being curious, is so important. I call my tribe the essence explorers because that's what we do. It's an experiment, and we get to consciously create how we work with these different practices.
I love that explorer. And I mean, I'm big into really get curious about your life, about your thoughts, about things coming up because it takes out the judgment and so much more opens up. But as you step into, you get to be an explorer and that ability to consciously create. And so, consciously is really being aware of what you're bringing in and wanting to create in your life. Can you talk about more of the profound practices and the ways that we can start pulling in that conscious living into our lives?
Yeah. So a lot of it is sort of looking at values, your boundaries that you might want to put in place. And again, this is a constant iterative process. The more you do it, the less time it takes because you review these things or you're starting to bring them into your awareness. So you become more familiar with it. But it's aligning a lot of my practices now align with what values that I have, what boundaries that I have, and I have practices that support those things in my life so that if I feel like something is coming in that I might be having some resistance, it allows me to explore that space of resistance, which resistance is not a bad thing. It allows me to explore it through the practices, and then I can shift and make conscious decisions based on my insights and what I see in that.
Very cool. So, like, you talk about practices. Can you give us some concrete beyond just breath work of what that might look like for people?
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about the 5 minute messy moment where we're kind of just taking in what is going on, but we
Mhm.
don't have to assign any story to it. So it's using all of the senses. So we might kind of listen to like, okay, what's going on in my with my hearing? Like, what am I hearing? What am I smelling? So it's bringing yourself into the space without actually assigning all this context to what is going on. And that allows you to bring it in for your nervous system to realize that you're safe. You can choose to bring in the breath or focus elsewhere. And then you kind of just let that go. We don't need to hold on to these things and we don't need to pick them apart and try to solve for the puzzle or what's going on. A lot of times, there's this time and space for that. There's a time and space for that deeper reflection. Don't get me wrong. I'm a deep believer in all of that. But when you're in a space with a screaming child in the store, or you're having a moment with your spouse and you just don't feel like getting too deep into it, grounding within yourself and just letting it go is really, really cool.
Yes, it is. And I love the permission and I guess the awareness that we're bringing to we don't always have to deep dive. Because I think
No.
many women, especially, get on the healing journey where it now becomes we have to dissect every single thought, belief, story, should that we have coming up in our lives. And you're 100% right. In that moment that is messy and we're overwhelmed or overloaded and we have a tantruming kiddo or an upset partner or we're upset, that's not the moment to go in and say, why am I reacting like this? And where did that story come from? And trying to do the deep inner work. It really is the moment, though, to say, okay, let's bring it back to me. Let's really dial it in. Let's give myself and my nervous system some safety so that I can then respond in a way that I'm going to like a little bit better. Because we all do the, snappy response where we're not super happy with like how it came out. And then you have to do the repairs and the apologies. But in that moment, if we can take that step back, if we can ground, if we can feel safe, we're less likely to explode in ways that we're going to have to clean up later and more likely to open for that more capacity of, okay, I can stand in the middle of the grocery store and be uncomfortable as my kid screams and tantrums on the floor. And I'm not going to lose it too. I get to be in that messy moment. I might be uncomfortable, but I'm not yelling either. So I love that there are the moments and spaces and times that we're going to bring in the different tools, that we can come back into this presence. And I'd love to hear how you describe kind of that shift into presence and what that looks like and feels like. Because I think a lot of people are so on overdrive that it's like we're on the freeway and life's just passing us by. And we're not even really cueing into our own systems to that we're hungry or tired or need to pee, but it's just flying by. So, how can we go from fast pace? I don't ever sit down to eat. I've got to run, run, run. I'm eating lunch at 3 o'clock while my kid's at the soccer game, whatever it is, to bringing in that present and presence, knowing that they probably can't not have their kid in soccer and quit their job. And, you know, how do you shift and really step into that?
Yeah, well, this is going to sound crazy, but it really does start with that intuitive sense of starting to listen to those things like, hey, I do need to pee. Or I do need to I need to grab a couple of bites of something. That's a great place to start because well, my background is in business and tech. So I've been in those industries for a long time. Those are two of the places where you could work 80 to 100-hour weeks
Mhm.
easily, right? So I'm no stranger to having my body cues overridden by a sense of needing to serve somebody else's purposes. So what this looks like for me and where it kind of started is just cueing into those body senses. And it was uncomfortable to look at someone who is talking to me and say, I need a bio break. You know, can we come back to this? It really starts with feeling into it as best as you can. Please don't go for perfection here because if this is not your norm or if this is new to you, just start out with the littlest bit of, oh, I sense that, or I noticed that I was hungry, or I needed to use the restroom, or whatever. And then maybe you stretch it a little further and you say, this is great conversation. Can you give me 10 minutes for a bio break? And then you'll get more comfortable with saying, I need a bio break and just going. Like it's in stages, right? If you're someone who's just on the go all the time. But it can be done. I am an example of that. And there was a point in time where I was working full time. I went back to get my master's. My grandmother had a stroke, so I took on her care full time, and I was doing raising my son, had all my household responsibilities. And I did this very thing. I started to cue in small moments, noticing what I needed for myself, and then slowly practiced giving myself the permission to follow up on those things. And it really did. It takes some time. That's okay. That's what we're here for, is to have these experiences and for them to keep growing. So give yourself permission to let this move in your life the way that it needs to move, and just be okay with that.
I love the permission to take it in small, bite sized steps and how you described it, where we're not launching in and changing our life with one magic wand, but it starts with that awareness of if I've been ignoring my bodily cues, just starting to be aware of that. And the conscious effort that it takes sometimes for some people to say, oh, wait, I need to do something about this. And it might disrupt or be uncomfortable for somebody else because they're going to have to wait. I know I was one. I was one to like not go to the bathroom if it was going to, interrupt a meeting at work. I was going to hold it because, I might miss something or the speaker, whatever the story was that I was going for. But it is important to start tuning in of I have to go before I'm bursting. And it's okay for me to say and then take care of my own needs. And I love that. Can you give me 10 minutes to just take my break? And, can we swing back around this because I need to go eat or use the restroom or whatever it is, and then we'll swing back around. But really lining that out for people that there are steps that we're going to take and there's comfort levels, capacity that we're going to grow, that range of ability that we're growing so that we have more comfort. And then it just becomes that muscle reflex, automatic in, I've got to go to the bathroom. Hold on a sec. I'm going to go to the bathroom. I need to grab something to eat. Can we finish this after or while I eat? But really owning that. And it sometimes is starting like that conscious living is starting in that body awareness and taking care of our needs. And then it sounds like it's growing from there.
Yeah, and it's about practicing. So I know I keep coming back to that, but you may want to practice visualizing yourself doing this, because a lot of times it is not comfortable at first, especially if we're used to being people pleasers and putting our needs on hold and going 110 miles an hour. It is not comfortable when we start to make these shifts. So I would do a lot of things like, when I left the office, I would like maybe review the day a little bit and think, this is how it could have went. And with not guilt, not layering anything in it, no deep thinking, just envisioning how it might look if I did it a different way where I focused on what I needed in the moment. And that practicing allowed it to actually come into form easier, I believe.
That's incredible that you're talking because as you talked practice, I was thinking actual practice of like, here I am doing my breath work, but you're having that internal rehearsal that is giving our brains, because our brains don't know the difference between what we have done and what we are rehearsing in our minds. But you're giving yourself in that non judgmental space. Hey, if I did a rewrite here, what would that or could that have looked like? What would it be if I just went through and I said, hold on a sec. I'm going to, run to the restroom and I'll be right back. Would anybody have been upset? Would anybody have really even noticed? And that's one of the things I really noticed is while I thought it was going to be a big deal, nobody else did. Nobody really cared that I went to the bathroom and snuck out of the meeting and came back in 5 minutes. But for me, feeling disruptive, that was a bigger story. And so I love you're giving yourself those opportunities for rehearsal where we can kind of rewrite. It's like that choose your own adventure. I chose this way, but you always go back and read the different ways that it could have happened. It's giving your brain different options because sometimes our brains only give us certain options. And without having a variety, like we're going to get the same options over and over. I had when my kids were a little younger and we were at a playground and there was like some icky food, I've forgotten what it was, up at the top of the slide. I have a kiddo that is one that would put that icky food, whatever it was, into their mouth. And so my first reaction when the kids yell up, I was with another mom, the kids yelled up or yelled down and said, "Oh my gosh, there's something gross up here. It looks like," I've forgotten if it's ice cream or something like that. My initial response was, "Don't eat it. Don't touch it. Get away." Because I can see my kiddo like totally consuming it. And it's like, ah. The other mom's response was to go get baby wipes in a bag and go clean it up. Now, I never once thought about going and getting stuff to clean it up. My initial response, the response my brain gave me was get my kids out of there so they don't consume it. Her response, different brain, was, oh, I'm going to go get it and clean it up. Now, if she had told me, can you grab stuff and clean it up? 100% would have done it. But our brains don't always give us those options. So when we come into the I should have, I could have, I would have, or had other people tell us, oh my gosh, you should have handled that differently. Our brain may not have even given us that option, so we couldn't have handled it differently. And I love how you're then taking that step back and saying, oh, okay, in a non-stress environment, I'm done with work. It's time to be in a safe space. I'm in my car. I'm at home. I'm feeling okay. It's low risk. Now's the time to go back and figure out what could have been different and then rehearse it, play it in our minds so that our brain has experienced it. And the next time it becomes an option. It's so fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and I will actually like feel the feelings that as I'm going through it, I'll bring the feelings of what that would feel like in my body to make space for myself, to say my needs out loud, to put that pause for myself, and I'll feel it. And in fact, I can feel it right now. And it feels so good. So of course I want more of that. And then I found that I was starting to do it just more and more naturally because I was able to give myself that option now.
I think that makes it so much more powerful when we bring in the sensations, the feelings with it. So it's not just this cognitive story, but we're seeing it, we're feeling it, we're really allowing ourselves. I mean, and that's how memory works, right? We remember things more powerfully when it's connected to emotions. And so when we are giving ourselves that ability to, I'm going to feel how confident I feel or how good it feels or how steady or grounded I feel. As I'm doing this, we're just making that so much more powerful. We have a few more minutes. Is there anything else that you want to highlight before we're done?
I would say just try it. Just try the idea of profound practices. Just try the 4 breaths in, the 8 breaths out, and allow yourself to explore. Get the idea of perfection. And my husband said to me the other day, because we were in a restaurant and it was really noisy, and I could start to feel my nervous system kind of ramping up, maybe getting overwhelmed. And he made me laugh because he's like, "Well, shouldn't you be able to tune all that out now with all this stuff that you do?" And I started laughing because it's like there's no perfection here. There's no end place that you get. It's just the practicing and just letting yourself explore is so critical here. There's so much insight, so much life to be experienced out there beyond the barriers and borders that we've been told or programmed that are there.
Yes. I just want to highlight there is no end place that you get.
No.
I don't think a lot of us have realized that. I think we have tied to, I'm going to do my profound practice, and that's going to get me to, here's A, I'm going to get to B. B is going to be this perfect, amazing life. I'm going to react in the way that I'm supposed to react every single time. And the same thing with like on my healing journey, I'm going to heal from, this, that, and the other, the trauma that's come, the stories that I've heard, the limiting beliefs. And then I'm going to hit this point that it's going to be all done. And there is no end place that you get. And that there's so much wisdom in those words, in that this is a journey. And when we're not trying to get to an end place, I think there's so much more freedom in the practice.
Yeah. And you know what really drove me that home for me, Landy, is I spent a lot of time with people who are in end of life. And it's messy a lot of the time, right? It's messy, the end of life. And we just give each other space. We just give each other space to be with each other and the messiness. And that was okay. And it was a practice. We were practicing that to end of life, which made me realize that there's no end to this. That's a transition too.
It's very powerful. That's a transition too. And if we look at
Yeah.
this, there's a lot of transitions that we're going through in different ages and stages and lifetimes that we're doing. And if it's just a journey and we can just keep practicing, there is not that end. It is a continual practice and it's not perfect. And if we let ourselves off the hook from doing it perfectly, like we get to grow in exponential ways.
Love that.
Oh my gosh, Michelle, you're so incredible. Would you share a little bit about your gift? And because I know people are resonating with you, how to continue the conversation with you outside of the village and outside of this podcast?
Sure. Well, if you go to essence-experience.com, you'll find the Profound Practices workbook, which is a great place to start. And in there, it has an email address and ways to get in touch with me. The best thing to do to start getting a taste for this work is to get on the email list and get the emails for a couple weeks, because I do send out almost daily Profound Practices. So that gives you a great place to start. And then if you want to continue the conversation, I'm more than happy to set up a discovery call and we can chat and see where you're at.
And I will have all of your links down in the show notes. I want to thank you so much. This is such an incredible conversation, and thank you for being part of the village.
Thanks, Landy. I'm so excited. Thank you for letting me have this opportunity.
What I'm taking from this conversation and what I hope you felt is the reminder that we don't have to be perfect to be present. We don't have to have it all figured out to live differently. Sometimes it's the smallest awareness, the smallest shift, the smallest moment of honesty that changes the entire trajectory of how we move through our own lives. If this episode brought something forward for you, let it. Let it sit. Let it teach you something about the pace you've been keeping or the way that you've been treating yourself. And if a woman you love came to mind, someone who's been carrying so much she doesn't even realize it anymore, share this with her. These conversations land differently when we don't have to hold them all alone. I want you to know how incredible I think you are and how grateful I am that you are here with me and that you are doing something good for yourself. You're allowed to build a life that doesn't require you to recover from it, but a life that feels good while you're in it. So much of what we discussed today lives beneath the surface of women's lives. The pressure, the pace, the internal negotiation no one ever sees. And the fact that you're here listening, reflecting, taking yourself seriously, that is not small. That is leadership. I am so grateful that you're here. I am grateful that you're choosing to take time to listen to these conversations that expand you rather than just distract you. That tells me everything about the season you're stepping into. And if you're ready for a space that meets you at that level, that gives you grounded support, real conversations, and the kind of nervous system and identity work that actually changes your life and holds, that space is Magnetic Her. I would love to invite you in. When you're ready for something deeper, you'll feel it, you'll know it, and you'll know exactly where to go. I want to thank you so much for being here. This is Landy Peak, and I will talk to you on the next episode. Hey, before you go, just a little bit of legal. This podcast is designed for educational purposes only. It is not to replace any expert advice from your doctors, therapists, coaches, or any other professional that you would work with. It's just a chat with a friend, me, where we get curious about ideas, thoughts, and things that are going on in our lives. And As we're talking about friends, if you know someone who would benefit from the conversation today, please share, because I think the more that we open up these conversations, the more benefit we all get. So until next time, give yourself a big hug from me and stay curious, because that's the fun in this world.